On this episode, I'm going to share with you the reasons why I think that Poland has become more European than the rest of Europe. Boom! Boom! Cześć ludzie! What's up people? Hola, JT here. Welcome to another episode. I've been thinking strongly about this topic. Of course, ever since the situation with Trump and how the European Union has decided that it's time to not only solidify the strength that the countries have among each other, but also to be a little bit more proactive when it comes to the sentiment of what is it to be European. How do we defend that? What are the core values that Europeans have as a whole? Being from Latin America, I understand being part of that community. Latinos, of course, all the way from the north in Mexico to the tip of the southern hemisphere in Argentina and Chile, we feel, for the most part, brotherly. There are values that we share that makes me particularly feel warm inside. Like if I walk around, I don't know, Stare Miasto here in Warsaw, and I hear somebody speak Spanish, and it's not, Spanish from Spain, nothing against Spanish from Spain or Spanish people for that matter, but if it's like a Latin American, I'm like, oh, it's like a warm in my heart. In Europe, we have 44 countries that are part of what you call Europe. There are some countries that are transcontinental, that are not on the list of the 44 countries that the United Nations has determined that constitute Europe. Those are Turkey and Cyprus, mostly because they are kind of like in Europe and also in Asia. Every country in this continent has its own set of values, its own set of customs. Sometimes they differ greatly. When we think about how those countries organize themselves and how they've been able to collaborate with each other, of course we cannot go further without mentioning the European Union. We cannot go further than mention all the different treaties that exist, like NATO and so on. We know the influence that those organizations have had, positively, but also somewhat negatively. The core values of Europe have been somewhat replaced. Of course, you think about Western Europe, you think about economical security, growth, development, political influence, world influence, without a doubt. But there are other values. Very quickly you notice that there are some of those values that maybe are missing in the West. Now, this is not the video to talk about the West versus the East or, Central East. This is just a video that I want to make because I've been reflecting about what is it that attracts me so much about Poland and why I feel so at home here, even though I come from a completely different world altogether. And trust me, oftentimes I do encounter a lot of clashes and moments where I have to adapt and change my mindset, and sometimes request of others to maybe respect my way of thinking and of acting. So it goes without saying that it's not an easy transition, if you will, for me, or for any Latino for that matter, to come to Poland. Yet at the same time, I've never felt more at home. I believe that to fully integrate into a society, you have to have a closer connection with the locals. Maybe you are dating somebody from that culture, which is the case with Poland. I am married to a Polish woman. The way I see Poland and the way that I experience Poland is different. It's like I have a foot inside and I can see behind the scenes and I can interpret things through a different prism, through a different set of goggles. Now, what are those values that I'm talking about that Poland has that somehow, some way have been getting lost through the passing of time all the way in the rest of Europe? Well, you have things like community. Community is extremely important, and you have it here in Poland. It's very present, very prevalent among Polish families, for instance. Another thing is balanced development. What does that mean? What is balanced development? When you have a place that starts to improve, starts to grow economically, starts to develop more and more and more infrastructure, modern facilities, that is good. I love modernity. Trust me. I am not the type of guy that just likes the old stuff. Although I do have a little kink for castles. I love castles. But there is balance in the development. They don't all of a sudden tear down all their history just to build new things. And I think that Poland does a terrific job of mixing the old and the new. Another core value that is, in my opinion, so easy to spot here in Poland is traditions. In Poland, people love their traditions. Although I have to say sometimes it's a little painful because I like to challenge the rules a little. I like to push the boundaries of culture and traditions. Still, it has to be said that in that sense, Poland is doing it right. Poland has not abandoned, and I don't think will ever abandon their culture and their influences. Yes, times have changed and times are changing. New generations maybe are not doing things that our grandparents were doing, and some people will have something to say about that, and they will say, oh yeah, we're losing our traditions. But I think there's a line that divides the traditions that can be modernized and the traditions that are part of the essence of what it's like to be Polish. And my friends, I think those ones are intact. But the first thing that I want to talk to you in regards to this is the foundations of European principles. When you think about it, Europe's historical and cultural foundation rests on key values like human dignity, social solidarity, freedom, democracy, and a commitment to balanced development, right? Today, however, these values are increasingly overshadowed in Western Europe by technocratic governance, corporate influence, and consumerist lifestyles. Sadly, economic growth often takes precedence over societal well-being, family life, and cultural preservation. Poland, though, although forward-thinking, still maintains a strong commitment to these older European ideals. It has embraced development without sacrificing its social roots and also its spiritual roots for the people that this is actually very important. But the second thing that I want to talk to you about is Poland's model of development. It's impressive that in a post-communistic Poland, the level of global integration, the level in which Poland has grown economically, the infrastructure, actually the place that Poland has at the table, at the international table of world leaders, talking about countries, of course, not specific people. Poland has earned its place. Poland is a respected country, and that is a very hard thing to achieve given where Poland was just as close as 30 years, 35 years maybe. And listen, now that I think about it as I am developing my idea, I do have to make somewhat of a separation because I keep referencing Western Europe. Of course, when we look at Eastern Europe, we have a very particular situation. You have a lot of countries that were under the influence of the Soviet Union. Many of them, still to this day, are recovering. Poland was never part of the USSR. And I think that for sure plays a role in the liberation that Poland had when the USSR fell. I want to make sure that if you are watching and you are from a country like Latvia or Lithuania or whatever, Bulgaria, it's understandable that it's probably harder and has been harder for countries like yours to completely rid yourself of that influence and power that Russia had. To this day, probably still has a big impact and influence. Even though some of these countries are part of the European Union, still, we have to make sure that we specify this, because I don't want to glorify Poland and Poland's growth and development and use it as an example of, oh, this is what the countries in Eastern Europe should have done. They all should be like Poland, but they haven't been as efficient. Maybe, once again, to some degree, that might be true, But it's not the sole reason why these countries, some of them, haven't developed as much as Poland has in the last 30 years. There are other factors. But without a doubt, Poland has done things correctly. Things are not perfect. I can already see people typing, telling me all the things that are not right in Poland. But still, I am able to compare and I'm able to see how Poland is today and benefits that members of Polish society have that sometimes are taken for granted here. One example that comes to mind when it comes to this support for families, I'm going to warn you, this is not political. I am not associated to any political party here in Poland. I want to make sure that I say that. But we have to mention, for example, a program in Poland that gives families that might be in need, or I think to all families that have children, give them a fixed amount of money to help them. I get it, you are entitled to your opinion. I am not choosing sides here. But I'm just saying there are so many more countries where you would not have anything, no support for families or for children whatsoever. So this is a benefit. And another one that is huge, and you feel it a lot more when you have family, is that work culture. The prevalence of the burnout and overworking that exists in Western Europe, in the United States, where people are just working all of the time. They don't have a lot of free time because it's all work, 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 work. And people burn out. They don't see their children. They make money, maybe more money than in Poland at times, but they're spending that money paying babysitters. They're suffering from gazillion things, many of them brought by stress and anxiety. In Poland, you still have something that I would not be able to explain if I did not live here. And that is how much free time people have to enjoy national holidays, to go on vacations. Like, I know a lot of people here that they go on holidays. Maybe it's just a weekend, maybe it's just going out, to their countryside home. But a lot of people here have the opportunity to escape the rat race and to go and have fun with their kids. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that in Poland, people respect work time and they respect your free personal time. Okay, so this one, I am gonna admit to you guys that I've changed my mind in recent times about this. I didn't used to think that this was such an important thing. Maybe because of my cultural background, I never really felt that I had to exercise this. And I'm talking about identity and cultural continuity. Feeling that you have to proactively make sure that your culture and your identity continues to be practiced by the newer generations. I am from Latin America, I'm Dominican, so it's like we've never really had, let's say, a thread towards our own identity. Like, it was something that never really crossed my mind. We don't have a bunch of immigrants coming to Dominican Republic. Okay, well, maybe we have the Dominican-Haiti situation, but that's a completely different topic altogether. But for the most part, compared to life in Europe and European countries, and how, by the geographical nature of the European continent and its countries, people are just crossing borders, and they live here, then they live there, and then they go to another place. And of course, the well-known migrant situation, we have people from other parts of the world coming to Europe, right? They are seeking a lot of the things that are good in Europe. And Poland has had to make sure to strengthen the definition of what it means to be Polish and what it means to be in Poland and the things that you should respect. And people understand that being Polish is more than just having a passport. And they want to make sure that everyone understands that. Everybody, anyone coming to Poland, whether it's visiting or relocating to Poland, whatever it is, the message is that being Polish is not about holding a Polish passport, which is hard to get, by the way. But still, if you manage to get it, there's a chance that you understand what it's like to be Polish and you respect the ideals of Polish people, the customs, the traditions. Sadly, unlike what is happening in many Western countries in Europe, there's no way that you can incorporate yourself into a culture and understand it, respect it, and basically full on become a part or a working part, well-functioning part of that society if you don't assimilate, if you don't learn the language, if you don't learn how the locals think and why they act a certain way. Sadly, you need to protect your ideals and you need to protect what is yours and what makes you you. Now, having said that, I am completely opposed to any discourse that proposes hate, violence, has any racist undertone and remarks. 100% against those. And the last thing is Poland's role in a rebalanced Europe. Poland is constantly reminding Europe that progress doesn't have to come at the expense of identity, of cohesion, or the human spirit for that matter. While Western European capitals race towards digitalization, modernity, big finance, and chunky, fat GDPs, often leading to social fragmentation, Poland is choosing a different path, a slower path, more encompassing, more integrated. And in doing so, Poland demonstrates that Europeanism is not defined by GDPs or by urban density, but by how a society treats its people, how it preserves its culture, and how it prepares for the future without losing its soul. To say that Poland is more European than Europe is not to romanticize the country or to ignore its challenges, but rather to recognize that in a time when Europe seems to be somewhat forgetting a little bit of those core founding values, Poland is quietly holding on to them. Through a commitment to tradition, community, and balanced growth, Poland shows us a European model of identity that is both rooted and modern at the same time, reminding us of what Europe once was and still could be. Boom! That's all, guys. That's the end of this episode. I hope you liked it. I honestly believe that Europeans, with all their differences, different cultures, different identities, they still hold on to each other through the similarities. And I can see, I can sense that Europe is waking up to the understanding that they need to protect the core values that made this continent what it is. And Poland, in my opinion, is leading the way. And I think the world has recognized this. I do hope, though, that this video is not taken out of context and completely disagree with any action that leans to racism, to violence, any sort of behavior that is not humane and decent. With that said, I'll see you on the next episode. Adios.